Good morning. Welcome to this morning's meeting of the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means, Senate Committee on Finance, Joint Subcommittee on Public Safety, Natural Resources, and Transportation. Would the committee secretary please call the roll?
Senators Nguyen, Titus, Taylor, Assembly members Anderson, Brown May, Dickman, Hibbets, Mosca, Chair Watts.
And I am here. Thank you. Happy Hump Day, everyone. Please mark Chair Taylor present when she arrives. I know folks coming in from Reno have had to brave an accident, and folks are running behind. So today we will be hearing budgets from the Office of the Chief Information Officer, as well as the Department of Public Safety. So with that, we'll welcome the Department of Public Safety back up to the table. All right. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I am presenting from down here. I'm not sure if broadcast services can see the slide deck. For the record, my name is Timothy Galuzzi, and I have the honor of serving as the state's Chief Information Officer within the Office of the State Chief Information Officer within the Office of the Governor. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today. I'm here to present the governor's recommended budget for the Nevada Office of Cyber Defense Coordination, or OCDC, and to outline the proposal to transition OCDC from the Department of Public Safety to the Office of the Chief Information Officer within the governor's office. With me today, I have Mr. Adam Miller, Administrator of the Office of Cyber Defense Coordination, and Tiffany Morelli, our Chief Financial Officer. We would like to begin our presentation with a brief overview of the Office of Cyber Defense Coordination and their budget enhancements. And for that, I will pass it off to Administrator Miller.
Chair, members of the committee, Adam Miller for the record, Administrator for the Office of Cyber Defense Coordination. The Office of Cyber Defense Coordination was established in 2017 by this legislature. Since its inception, OCDC has served as the primary focal point for statewide cybersecurity strategy, policy, planning, and coordination. Since 2017, the Department of Public Safety has been the agency home for OCDC, underscoring that strong cybersecurity is an important component for strong public safety. After 8 years, the maturation of OCDC has led to increased public and private partnerships at the municipal, county, and tribal level, while also leveraging the strong relationships with state agencies like DPS and the Office of the Chief Information Officer. These two agencies provide critical expertise in a variety of areas that allow OCDC to achieve its ultimate goal of increasing the cybersecurity posture of the state of Nevada. OCDC's mission is broad and crucial. In practice, OCDC is an integral resource for state, local, tribal, and territorial partners in preparing for and responding to cyber incidents. While OCDC's mission may seem daunting, the OCDC team embracing this challenge is currently comprised of 4 dedicated staff. Despite its limited size, the office's impact is felt statewide through partnerships and advisory support. However, under the current structure within the Department of Public Safety, OCDC faces inherent limitations. In effect, OCDC has been operating alongside the Office of the Chief Information Officer, but in a separate silo and a separate agency. This separation can introduce redundancies, coordination challenges, and slower response times in the face of fast-moving cyber attacks. A streamlined solution to more efficiently overcome the cybersecurity challenges of the state will be discussed more in depth later in this testimony. I want to turn now to the budget specifics, and if we can go to slide 3. The governor's recommended budget for OCDC for budget account 4704 for the upcoming biennium is $661,838 in FY25 and FY25-26 and $658,669 in FY26-27. This request is an overall 27% increase from the current fiscal year's program, an increase primarily attributable to one-time equipment refresh and improved cost allocation, as well as investments in training and software tools, but an increase that I feel matches the budgetary needs of OCDC with the importance and accountability of our mission to the state. I want to emphasize that under this request, no new full-time positions are being added. OCDC will remain a 4-person office. We are maximizing the impact of current staff and resources rather than expanding our headcount. I talked about our base budget, which is just salary, operating costs, and necessary cost allocations. There are 2 enhancements that I'd like to highlight for you. E275 is cybersecurity software and training. This decision unit is a general fund enhancement of $1,270 in FY26 and a similar expenditure, $1,270 in FY27. E275 addresses critical needs for up-to-date cybersecurity software and training for our staff. Second enhancement is E710. This decision unit is a one-time appropriation of $4,040 in FY26, dedicated to replacing and upgrading computer hardware and associated software used by OCDC. This one-shot investment will bolster OCDC's operational readiness for the next several years. And finally, we have a cost allocation adjustment, E800. The governor's recommended budget includes $9,946 in FY26 and $10,299 in FY27 in agency cost allocation to properly budget for shared administrative services under its CIO. This is largely an accounting mechanism to ensure OCDC pays its fair share for central services, now that it will be within the OCIO structure rather than under public safety. And for the transition portion of that, I'd like to kick it back to Tim Gluzzi.
Thank you, Administrator Miller. For the record, once again, my name is Timothy Gluzzi, State Chief Information Officer. I'm going to offer additional testimony on the transition of OCDC into the Office of the Chief Information Officer. I first want to make mention that this transition should not be seen as any negative light on Department of Public Safety. Cybersecurity is public safety, and there is a vested interest in cybersecurity because it does impact all constituents in Nevada. And that's why, in part of this, is a ongoing commitment to a stronger and ongoing partnership between our agency, public safety, and the Division of Emergency Management moving forward. And so with that, this proposal to transition OCDC into the Office of the CIO is driven by a clear rationale to unify Nevada's cybersecurity strategy and resources to enhance the efficiency and strengthen our defenses. By bringing OCDC into the OCIO, we will create a stronger, more cohesive cybersecurity team that leverages the expertise of both OCDC specialists and the OCIO's enterprise IT security staff. All levels of Nevada's government will benefit: state agencies, counties, cities, and tribal organizations, through improved support and truly unified cyber defense approach. I want to stress that this move is not about growing government or adding bureaucracy, but about optimizing our existing resources to address an urgent priority. Under the OCIO, OCDC will be positioned to eliminate duplicative efforts and streamline operations. Currently, OCDC must coordinate across departmental lines to implement cybersecurity policies and respond to incidents. After the transition, those lines disappear. We consolidate policy development and execution with one office, ensuring that the same team developing security standards is also implementing and enforcing them. This tight integration will reduce administrative overhead and speed up decision-making. For example, if a critical vulnerability or cyber threat emerges, having OCDC inside the OCIO means our incident response can be coordinated immediately through one chain of command, rather than navigating interdepartmental protocols. Moreover, looking into the future, OCIO's infrastructure, such as security operations tools, monitoring systems, and service desk support, can be directly extended to OCDC's work, avoiding parallel or duplicative systems and saving costs. We anticipate better utilization of every dollar spent on cybersecurity by pooling tools and talent, which aligns with this legislature's priority on efficient government spending. The transition will also yield a more cohesive cybersecurity policy framework for the state. OCDC and the OCIO each bring important policy perspectives. OCDC focusing on statewide cyber disruption response planning and local government readiness, and OCIO focusing on enterprise IT standards and architecture. Merging these perspectives will produce a single unified cybersecurity strategy for Nevada. We will speak with one voice on cybersecurity matters, from setting statewide standards to executing agency compliance audits. This cohesive approach means no gaps or conflicting directives. Every state entity and partner will know that there is one clear set of cybersecurity policies, reducing ambiguity. In the long run, this unified strategy will help Nevada more effectively prioritize investments and measure improvements in our cyber posture. It also improves accountability. The legislature and governor will be able to hold one office, the Office of the Chief Information Officer, responsible for cybersecurity outcomes, rather than splitting the oversight between public safety and IT departments. And so cyber attacks can happen at any hour. And when they do, our response must be swift and effective. Integrating OCDC and OCIO will significantly enhance our incident response capabilities. The move creates a broader incident response team under the state CIO, combining OCDC's coordination role with the OCIO's technical expertise in network infrastructure defense. For instance, if a county experiences a ransomware attack and calls OCDC for help, as they do now, OCDC, under the OCIO, will be able to immediately tap the state's central IT security team, resources, and infrastructure knowledge without bureaucratic delay. This unified team can conduct joint cybersecurity incident response exercises, develop consolidated incident response plans, and ensure that local responders are on the same page. That result will be faster containment of threats and more efficient recovery, minimizing downtime of critical government services. In an era where cyber incidents, especially ransomware and data breaches, are increasing in frequency and sophistication, we must organize ourselves in the most resilient way possible. This proposal directly addresses that need. And with that, if there are any questions that the committee may have, we will stand ready for those. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We do have some questions. We'll begin with Assemblymember Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. My questions actually have to do with that. My first question has to do with that slide that you were just on, Director Gillespie. In particular, you talk about strengthening partnerships and collaborations. So what additional services would be provided to state, local, and private agencies as a result of this transfer? If you could go a little bit deeper into that. I know that you mentioned measuring improvements, but what exactly are you thinking about with that?
Thank you for the question. For the record, Timothy Gillespie, State Chief Information Officer. We are always looking for additional resources that we can provide out to municipal partners. We are in firm support of a cohesive strategy. We understand that all municipal partners connect to executive branch state government in some way, shape, or form, whether it be through business transactions through the Secretary of State, through voting transactions through the Secretary of State. So we are looking for opportunities to provide education, to provide policy support, and to provide other cybersecurity efforts. So I'll also pass it to Administrator Miller. He actually has been conducting outreach and other educational efforts, and he could probably provide a bit more detail than I.
Adam Miller for the record. Yeah, so when we talk about kind of the tools that are available for CIO versus OCDC, a lot of threat scanning tools, a lot of security operations center tools that OCIO currently has in-house or contracts out under their hat. OCDC currently is reliant solely on grant funding to get some of those programs that we can help counties, municipalities, tribes. And so if the offices were to combine, we would be able to leverage a lot of those in-house programs that CIO has, whereas grant funding is somewhat unreliable and having to apply for year after year. And with the SLCGP grant program that we do leverage, that is expected to expire at the end of next year. And so moving forward, we would be able to kind of team up those resources that OIS under OCIO has with OCDC to expand our outreach and our impact to local partners.
Thank you. I have a few follow-ups, if I may, Chair. So first follow-up, mentioning the Secretary of State and voting, is that meaning that cybersecurity would be under your office now in this proposal, or would it continue to be under the office of the Secretary of State, since that is in their voting area?
For the record, Timothy Galuzzi, great question, Assemblymember Anderson. The Secretary of State's office does have their own cybersecurity team. The reason why I mentioned that is just to really highlight that all connections into the executive branch do create potential vulnerabilities into the executive branch. And so whether it be file transfers for voting, it could be document submittal into the Department of Taxation from businesses, any connection that we have from any level of government does create potential threat vectors for the executive branch. And so that was just an analogous example of where potential threat vectors can come in, where the executive branch does have an interest in ensuring our municipal governments are secure.
Thank you for that answer, but I have many questions about that division, though, between the executive branch and, which does include the Secretary of State as well, and how that division will be done, but maybe we'll have that discussion offline, as it still feels like there's a little bit of some wiggle room in there as to who is the jurisdiction under with this proposal. And so that needs to be cleaned up a large amount. But can you please confirm that any expenses associated with this transfer can be absorbed within the Office of Chief Information Officer's current budget, as is recommended by the governor at this time?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember. Timothy Galuzzi, for the record, yes.
Love that quick answer. And I only have one more. You had mentioned that there would be a need for future expenditures, especially when expenses which may be needed, especially since so much of it's done at grant funding at this time. What future expenses may be needed to support the Office of Cyber Defense Coordination within the Office of the Chief Information Officer?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember Timothy Galuzzi, for the record. Any additional expenses would be for future programming needs, and we would be having those conversations during our next budget build. And we would be having those we would be having those conversations in partnership with this body. But it could be for expansion of cybersecurity training or additional programming out to municipal governments. But we would do that in collaboration with this body.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We also have questions from Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you, Chair. And continuing on this, I thought it was helpful context on that slide of the why of moving the OCDC, but I just wanted to see in your all's perspective why the Office of the Chief Information Officer couldn't delay the transfer of the Nevada Office of Cyber Defense Coordination budget account to the Office of Chief Information Officer until a rate assessment is established to support the activities.
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember Mosca. Timothy Galuzzi, for the record. I believe that any delay would further push out the the benefits that we would see from the increase in collaboration and communication of unifying the offices. And that would just put our municipal governments at risk, and any potential risk would, it would really put, it would not be us doing our due diligence and protecting Nevadans. And so I think moving forward with this now is prudent for cybersecurity in Nevada.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Chair Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I do have just a couple of questions, and forgive me if it's a duplication. I had a little traffic issue this morning. But I do just, excuse me, in combining the two offices, right, the Nevada Office of Cyber Defense Coordination and the OCIO, do you anticipate there would be some kind of economies of scale? I know one is more internal, the executive side, and one is more external, but they do both currently, I believe so, according to my notes, they do both currently do some of the same thing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Thank you for the question, Senator Taylor. For the record, Timothy Galuzzi. Yes, there is overlap on the policy creation and execution, and with some of the tool sets that are leveraged amongst the two offices. And we would hope that moving forward into the future, if there's services that OCDC can provide out to the municipal governments, such as services that could be leveraged through a security operations center, that we would be able to use the combined purchasing power of the executive branch plus those municipal governments in order to leverage economies of scale and get better licensing through those procurements. And then if there's any additional detail that Administrator Miller can add in, I would pass it to him as well.
Adam Miller for the record. Yeah, when we talk economies of scale, it's all about building those partnerships. And so when we acquire a tool that is used either internally with OCIO or externally with OCDC, when we talk about, to Assemblymember Mosca's point, when we talk about building those rates in, we've got, OCDC has the grant funding to extend that out for 2 years. So we can provide those programs at no cost to our SLTT partners for the next 2 years. Now, when you talk about combining those resources with OCIO, now we're talking about both internally and externally being able to maximize the impact, and where some of our SLTT partners, either in counties or municipalities, may fall short, the executive branch side of that can pick that up, and we can use those resources to help those folks get through cyber incidents.
May I follow up, Chair? Please. Thank you, Mr. Miller. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So really, if there is any, because currently there's a little bit of duplication, but because so you put the two together, then that means someone has a little bit extra time or whatnot, right? And so you're saying you anticipate being able to push that outward and do more for the external agencies that you're working with. Is that?
Adam Miller for the record. Yeah. So right now, my office is a little bit hamstrung both in resources and just in overall capacity for the amount of people that we have to actually help or oversee. And so I think being able to combine OCDC with the resources and just the brain power, or the overall expertise and brain power of CIO, just allows us to maximize our reach. And so while we're not going to pull CIO people to help a local municipality, we can provide that expertise through OCDC's office to those folks.
Thank you so much. We just one more question, Chair, if I may. I'm going to switch over just a little bit to the rate. Excuse me. Assemblymember Mosca asked about why you would move before the rate is established, and then we got an answer for that. So my question is, what has been the delay in establishing a rate?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Timothy Galuzzi for the record. I believe the delay in establishing a rate is we have to develop a service that the municipal governments are willing to consume. And so we are already out on the street and meeting with our municipal partners to figure out what service they want from the Office of Cyber Defense Coordination. And whether that be from a security operations center, from an intelligence sharing, we need to effectively sell this Office of Cyber Defense Coordination to our municipal partners, and prove that this value exists. And we have this opportunity with this grant funding to effectively give them an opportunity to try it before they buy it, so to speak, to demonstrate that there is value in this office as we developed this service ahead of time. And so our intent is to be able to provide this service and demonstrate to them that they can potentially offload some of the stuff that they're currently procuring individually as a municipal government, and instead consume the resources directly from the Office of Cyber Defense Coordination, instead of going out and procuring it individually as a municipality. That way we can leverage economies of scale.
Absolutely. That's really, I like the little sample, try before you buy standpoint. Do you have an estimation on when a rate would be when you've done all that outreach, which I understand, and then when the rate would be established? Because that seems like that's holding up a couple of things. And then that's it for me, Chair.
Thank you for the question, Senator. For the record, Timothy Galuzzi. Our intent is to get this all worked out for the next session. And so that's why we're hoping to get this move knocked out before the end of this session. That way, with this grant funding that we have to move very quickly on, we can effectively bring in these services, and Administrator Miller can continue his roadshow and get out to our municipal partners and continue selling what the Office of Cyber Defense Coordination can provide for them. And if Administrator Miller has any other details, I see him hovering over the button. I will let him kind of continue on.
Adam Miller for the record. Yeah, so when we talk about cybersecurity safety and a whole of state approach, the last thing we want is every municipality, every county to have their own security operations apparatus. And so providing that from a unified executive level on down, I think just goes to the point of a whole of state approach to cybersecurity.
Thank you. I understood it makes sense to pull together. I just wanted to know when we might expect the rate, and he gave me that answer. So thank you so much. Chair, thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you. Chair Taylor's questions raised a question of my own. So you're talking about, developing these services that you can essentially sell and market to municipalities. I think when we got the overview of the office, the understanding is that your office is really positioned to provide these services across state, local, and tribal partners. So what are the services that are being provided currently by your office? Can you just give us a little background on that?
Adam Miller for the record. So it's going to be a little bare, just with the recognition that it is incumbent upon grant funding. And so when I inherited this office in October of last year, we had $1.2 million in approved grant funding through the SLCGP grant program. To date, we have not expended any of that money solely because the grant approval process was pushed back from FY23. We had a work program that was approved to get us off the ground for $500,000, and then some kind of behind the scenes budgetary kind of wonkiness, I'll call it, between ownership of DPS on the operational side and CIO that has kind of frozen, as well as the federal level funding freeze for grants. So we're a little stuck at the moment on expending any of that grant money. But once I get approval and the green light that my bank is open, so to say, I'll be kind of expending $1.2 million to stand up a security operations center, a threat intelligence platform that will directly go to helping our SLTT partners.
Thank you. And then you mentioned a little bit earlier as we kind of talk about the cybersecurity landscape in the state and the various agencies, obviously public safety. You also mentioned the Division of Emergency Management. So can you talk a little bit about your understanding of the cybersecurity roles that will be played by the Division of Emergency, that are and will continue to be played by the Division of Emergency Management, and how your office will collaborate with them moving forward?
Adam Miller for the record.
Timothy Galuzzi. Oh,
Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and take first swing at this. Timothy Galuzzi for the record. So the Division of Emergency Management is really our close partner that handles the impacts of the cyber attacks and helps us with the coordination for the resources to support recovery efforts. And so they will be and continue to be and are a very close partner for us, and they help us coordinate task force. So they help stand up and support the cybersecurity task force. And so if there is a major incident, they are right there alongside us, helping with coordination efforts between multiple departments across the executive branch, with community partners. They help bring in federal support as well. And so that's really their role, is they will help with the coordination and resourcing for recovery and mitigation efforts after the incident, where we are more of the technical experts that provide a lot of like the threat hunting and mitigation and technical expertise for a cybersecurity incident. Where Division of Emergency Management comes in is where we talk about the outside impacts, so outside of the systems where infrastructure could be impacted, et cetera. And so, Administrator Miller, if you have any other details you want to add in.
Adam Miller for the record. Yeah, so for DEM specifically, they are going to be the most knowledgeable and the closest to the ground on outside of systems impacts. So you're thinking, critical infrastructure, oil refineries. Some of our, when we had the fire there, people see the fire on the hillside. They don't see the potential cyber impact and the networks that are affected by such incidents. And so DEM is an integral partner in kind of being on the ground and the impacts for that. Secondly, because SLCGP is a FEMA and DHS grant program, it inherently flows through DEM to our office. So we will always be tied at the hip when it comes to our grant funding.
Okay, thank you for that. So just to try and summarize it to make sure I've got it. DEM, your everything else is a little bit before. DEM is after there's an incident, and it sounds like your work, and particularly the Office of the Chief Information Officer, is internal to government, whereas DEM is focused on some of the outside of government infrastructure pieces. And it sounds like the reason behind the transfer is to, particularly at the state level, kind of centralize some of these things so that you're not going across to another state agency to provide assistance and support in addressing cybersecurity threats, that you're all in one office. And then hopefully we can deploy these programs to all of the other local government partners as well, and then that's something that can that they will see value in and help financially support. Is that a good summary of the rationale behind this proposal?
Adam Miller for the record. Yes, with one amendment. My office is not just state government focused at all, and I'll give one example that is now out in the public. REMSA had a recent ransomware attack. So REMSA immediately contacts the FBI, and then they contact me and say, hey, we've had this incident. I immediately go to Washoe County because of where REMSA sits and highlight for them, hey, are you guys tracking this? Washoe County was not tracking that. So they immediately go internal and start scanning their networks, making sure that they're either disconnected from the REMSA networks, or if they are and have seen the ransomware or the malware into their networks, they know to pull it off. So one example where we are not just a state government agency focus, we are actually in the community making sure that we work with our partners to the threats we see, to pass that information along to make sure that they're tracking as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's just something that I think we're all trying to understand as well, given the state-based nature of the Office of the Chief Information Officer, and just trying to understand how the moving pieces work currently and how they would work under this proposed transition. So members, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. And we'll now move on to our budgets from the Department of Public Safety. Welcome back, Director Togliatti, Ms. Brigham. And I will just ask that we try and keep the presentation relatively brief, so we do have several questions for you today.
Good morning. I'm George Togliatti, Director of the Department of Public Safety. And you've already introduced my Deputy Director, but we're here for supporting any questions you may have. And I have the most excellent team of chiefs of divisions who are ready to give you a succinct report on some of our most important divisions. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to, if we're going to do investigative division first, Mike Edgell, our Chief of Investigations.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Committee. My name is Mike Edgell, M-I-K-E-E-D-G-E-L-L for the record, for the Department of Public Safety, State Police. I'm the Chief of the Investigation Division, here to talk about our budget 3743. Going through our PowerPoint, our very first presentation, and we're going to talk about our mission here. The Investigation Division is the detective branch for the State Police. We provide quality investigative services statewide to our partners. A little bit about the breakdown of our division. We have 64 FTEs, 32 of which are sworn. Of those 32, there's one chief, there's one captain, 3 lieutenants, 8 sergeants, and 19 detectives. We have different units within the division. We have our narcotic task force, we have our major crimes unit, we have the Nevada Threat Analysis Center here in Carson City, and we have our safe waste tip line. Here's a copy of the current organizational chart reporting directly to Director Togliatti. Encompasses all 64 of our FTEs, also has some of our task force officers that are assigned to us from other agencies across the state. Further going through our presentation, talking about our performance measures, how we do what we do, how we know what we're doing and which direction we're going through the requests that are accepted from our agencies across the state, our investigative, the reports that we take regarding crimes, so specifically children, and a number of illicit drug trafficking, organizations that are interrupted and dismantled. Further going through our performance measures, what our Nevada Threat Analysis Center completes, disseminating products, situational reports, and disseminating weekly intelligence documents throughout the community. Our major crimes unit is made up of 2 different major crimes units. One is in Carson City, one is in Las Vegas. Both have 1 sergeant assigned to them. The one in Carson City had 4 detectives. I recently lost 1 to a promotion within the department. Down in Las Vegas, we have 1 major crimes unit with, there are 9 detectives that are assigned to that right now. Both of my major crimes units are consisting with are made up of the digital investigative unit, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute. So we're continually working and improving. One thing I would like to point out on this slide right here is in fiscal year 24, we conducted 296 investigations and successfully closed 202 of those, which is above the national average for an agency conducting investigations. This slide talks about our task forces, specifically 5 drug task forces across the state of Nevada, 1 in Ely, 1 in Elko, 1 in Winnemucca, Fallon, and Carson City. All of each have 1 sergeant assigned to them. Most of them have 1 detective assigned to them from the department. The one in Carson City does have 2. Our task forces are made up of other agencies, Sheriff's Office, city police departments, correctional officers, and the National Guard to help us conduct our mission. With these, I sit on a board with all of the chiefs that are affected chiefs, as well as the sheriffs, and we target specific problems in those communities that are affecting people. And usually it's going to be those 5 major drugs, such as fentanyl, heroin, methamphetamine, things that are going to damage the community, that cause addiction, that actually cause an increase in crime. So we specifically focus on those in those communities. Here we're going to talk about the Nevada Threat Analysis Center. It's one of 2 recognized fusion centers in the state of Nevada. NTAC is here in Carson City. We will serve all 17 counties, but the majority of them are the 16 outside of Clark County. Clark County has their own fusion center. This is operated by the Investigation Division here in Carson City. The Safe Voice Call Center is within the Investigation Division. Currently, Safe Voice has 973 schools that they work with. This tip line that they house here in Carson City is made up of some great people that have to talk to some very damaged people that have some things to report. From the inception of the call center, right there, we've received over 53,000 reports from either students, parents, or faculty members, or other people. And we do have our stats right there of our top 10 since between 2018 and the end of 2024. Going into our enhancements units, it's through that are supporting the governor's recommended budget. E231 is a transfer of tobacco settlement funds specific for our Safe Voice, which is formerly the Safe to Tell program, which we have instituted. This request is specific for overtime for the lieutenant that is assigned to the unit, as well as our sergeant that is the center manager that is involved with this. E710 is our one-shot appropriation, as part of our one-shot appropriations, which is vehicles, talks about five utility vehicles and 1 full-size sedan broken out over the biennium. E711 are office chair replacements throughout the state, and E712 is our computer replacements per our OCIO replacement schedule. E225 request, it just adds additional restitution. E226 requests, it adds the FBI funding to support our task forces. E227 is a request for funds for operational expenditures, such as digital crime scene mapping, et cetera, things we would use on a daily basis investigating crimes. E228, along with a couple other slides behind us, this talks about some of the digital equipment, the software and programs that we utilize during digital investigations. What we've noticed nationwide, worldwide over the past couple of years is nearly every crime has some sort of digital connection, whether it's a cell phone, whether it's some sort of digital media, a vehicle or a computer. And these are programs that we use on a daily basis so that we can operate and we can investigate those crimes. Next slide. Specific to E275, this is our request for funds to staff a digital investigative unit. In 2023, the department, we had 2 different units within the department that were utilizing the digital investigations, and we decided, since with the investigation division being the detective branch, that should fall under us. They're very, very, very busy. Currently, I have 1 sergeant that is running the unit up here in the north. He's the only one that does anything with phones right now, and I have 1 person in Las Vegas that does stuff with phones. This enhancement unit requests a sergeant, requests 1 DPS officer to assist with the digital forensics, as well as our cold case unit. I currently have nobody assigned to do any cold cases. Cold cases are assigned to detectives within the major crimes unit. And cold cases, because they are cold, they're only looked at when we finally get caught up. This decision unit also requests 4 non-sworn positions allowing me to be able to dedicate the law enforcement officers to law enforcement services outside of the office. This would allow people to come in and do the phones. We will still have officers assigned to the unit because we do uncover many, many photos involving CSAM, child sex abuse material, and we would like an officer in that unit so that they would be able to be consistent with evidence and procedures of evidence. E285, which is listed on the slide as well, this is the funding for additional software and licensing that would come along with the positions for this digital investigative unit. E229 requests funding for our software for our task force officers that come over that actually work in our offices, that work with us on a daily basis so that they would be able to continue operating on our computers so that we can't just tell them, no, we don't have that kind of stuff for you here, we'll have to take you back, or we'll have to bring your computer over here. E230 is a request adjust from the DEA administration to align with our agreement with the DEA regarding overtime funding. E249 requests funding for our new location in Las Vegas at the Bermuda building. We have now moved into that building, and we are still we still have another lease that we're working with. E288. E288 is a request for funding for positions to staff an illicit cannabis unit. In the 82nd Legislature, Senate Bill 328 was passed. After Senate Bill 328 was passed, there was a section of NRS 678A.440 which added responsibility to the investigation division, where we would be primarily responsible for the enforcement of illicit cannabis activities when requested by the Cannabis Compliance Board. When that was passed, we received no additional funding for that, so we have not been able to accomplish much in that. However, when we do get major notifications of some major cannabis grows throughout the state, we do come in and we will take those. But once again, once those are brought to our attention, we're not actively looking for those. E900 and E901 are divisional transfers from outside of our division to help us function what we're doing. E900 is the current deputy director of the NTAC, the Nevada Threat Analysis Center. When DEM separated from the Department of Public Safety, we maintained this position within the NTAC, and this is a cooperative agreement to transfer that position to the investigation division because they do work for us. It'll make it more streamlined. E901 is a transfer from our position from the Preparation Division within the department. This is the position that was originally working on this, and we decided to combine those efforts, and the Preparation Division is allowing that. It's just a transfer position. Everything comes with it. And with that, I would like to thank you for the presentation, allowing me to offer the presentation, and I'm open for any questions should you have any.
All right, thank you very much. We do have a few questions. We'll begin with Assemblymember Brown-May.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chief, for your presentation. I just have questions relative to the digital forensics and cold case operations. It appears as though in our background material, 6 new positions and 1 transfer position are being requested. And then the data shows 37 cold cases that occurred between 1977 and 2003. Can you talk about the resources that are available to conduct digital forensic investigations related to cold cases? And then how are these 6 new positions are going to benefit this cold case review?
Mike Elgin for the record. Thank you for the question, Assemblymember. The 6 new positions that are being brought into the division will be specific to working in the digital investigative unit. So when there's a crime committed and we receive a phone, whether it's maybe it's from an overdose death, or maybe it's a criminal, maybe it's a witness, those phones are taken to the office, and once they're eligible to be processed, they're taken into our digital investigative unit, and they are plugged into machines, and it takes people to be able to run those machines. And we're on a backlog of phones right now. I wouldn't be able to give you an accurate number. I would have to get somebody for that. But The non-sworn positions would be working daily to be extracting the data from those phones. With the investigators, the sworn law enforcement, they will be there to look at the evidence and make sure that the warrants are being fulfilled. And then specific to cold cases, with current staffing, the 37 cold cases are spread throughout our major crimes units, both north and the south. All of our detectives have cases that they look at when they have an opportunity, or sometimes information will be coming in without being asked for. Somebody will report something and we'll go look at those cases. But all of the digital investigative personnel will be working specifically on phones, and that will free up the time for other officers to not only take current cases, but they would be able to do even cold cases, even if they weren't assigned to that unit.
Thank you. Follow-up, Chair. Thank you for that. So I'm going to paraphrase to make sure that I understand. We're looking at 7 positions, 6 new, 1 transfer. It looks like primarily it would be for cold cases, but I'm hearing you say really it's more for forensic investigation of technology. So I just want to be clear about that. Would you give me a nod if that's true?
Mike Edger for the record. Yes, mainly the positions are for digital investigations, for digital forensics, and they would be extracting the data from the phones with a sworn law enforcement officer to be able to do the cold cases, yes.
Thank you. So then the second part of my follow-up is, so what's the current time frame for processing the internal, external requests for digital forensics review? And then how are those 6 positions and that 1 transfer, how will that impact the time frame for processing those requests for digital forensics review?
Mike Edgel for the record. That's a great question. Thank you very much. Currently, we have 1 person assigned to digital investigations down in Las Vegas and 1 in Carson City. And we are responsible for not only within our department, but every other agency would like to help us. So phones will be taken to Las Vegas, phones will be taken to Carson City, and those phones are then prioritized. If it's something that's major, they will bump another phone out, and they will do that. That ties those 2 officers up at the time. Because as soon as 1 phone is done, they go in and they plug in another phone, or they might have 4 or 5 phones that are working at the same time with different computers, different programs. With these units that are specific to the digital investigation unit, we will have non-sworn civilians that will be working in there 2 at a time in each office, 1 in the north, 1 in the south, that will be able to the turnaround time will vastly improve. Right now, I wouldn't be able to give you a specific time frame how long it takes to get a phone, because phones are very complicated, and sometimes it takes a lot longer to get into a phone, a newer phone, than it does an older phone. If that answers your question, I hope.
Thank you. It does. I just one, and I'm sure you don't have it based on what you've just stated, the number of phones or items that you have backlog currently. I would love to know how many you're doing each year and what the current backlog is.
Currently, we have 500 phones. Sorry, 50 phones. 50 phones that are waiting to be extracted. But I would like to point out, I'm sorry, Mike Edgel for the record, but I also want to point out phones come in every single day.
Thank you. Following up on that, are there any backlogs related to the processing of cold cases?
Mike Edgel for the record. Backlogs, I believe the answer to your question would be those are still prioritized, and because they are cold cases, when we get new cases that come in, they will take precedent over a cold case. However, whenever we have downtime, whether it's a sergeant or a detective, they are looking at those cold cases.
Thank you. So the addition of these positions would then free up additional capacity to work on those cold cases, is that correct?
Mike Edgel for the record. Yes, not only would it free up the resources that are currently doing it, but we would be putting non-sworn positions into the digital investigation unit that would be specific to phones, which would then free up all of my law enforcement officers that are assigned to major crimes to be able to investigate current and then cold cases.
Thank you. I think, I appreciate the information about the phones that are waiting to be processed. I think one thing that I don't need right now, but I think would be helpful, you provided our staff some information on, I think, the calendar year 2024, some of the statistics around devices and essentially caseload, for lack of a better term, when it comes to digital investigations. I think it would be helpful for us to understand maybe a couple years prior, so that we can see the increase in that workload that is coming in. And then if you have any thoughts or projections on, based on that, where you see it going, I think that would just help us have a little bit of additional data to understand the trends that we're seeing and the increased demand. So no need to respond there, but I think that would be helpful follow-up. The other question that I did have is, so I know that there's a class specification that has been requested, the Property and Evidence Technician class. If that's not approved by DHRM, would the management analyst positions be the appropriate specification to support this digital investigation unit?
Mike Edgell for the record. Thank you for your question, Assemblymember Watts. The answer is no. It would not meet. An MA would not meet the specifications. However, if the competent class study is put out quite a ways, we currently house intelligence analysts within the investigation division under the Nevada Threat Analysis Center. That actually might be a proper class to be able to assist us then.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And then, again, I think this is just related. Looking ahead, does the agency anticipate that further resources are going to be needed for the digital investigative unit to meet its long-term goals?
Mike Edgell for the record. Technology is improving daily. So I think the resources that we would need in the future would be specific to technology and improvements. Every single day a phone is improved. The iPhone 17 comes out, then the iPhone 18 comes out, and then the resources that we use for our software and our programs, it takes them time to be able to catch up with that technology, which then costs a lot more money, and then we have to have those resources. So the only thing that I would say we would need in the future would be future technology programs, software, et cetera.
All right, thank you very much. I believe we do have a question from Chair Taylor.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. And Chief, thank you for the presentation. I do have a couple of questions on the new unit, the new illicit cannabis unit, slide 19. You're requesting 5 people. How do you know you need 5?
Mike Edgell for the record. Thank you, Senator Taylor, for the question. We based that on our current task force composition because we don't know exactly what we're going to be getting into at the illicit market. I've been doing a lot of research over the last couple of months. The Cannabis Compliance Board, they published a study. UNLV, their Cannabis Policy Board, they also published a study. And looking through that, the 4 bodies, that is the possibility for one task force, I believe. We don't even know how large this could be. But we had to start someplace. I have a statewide division, and if I have 1 sergeant and 4 officers, which were in the recommended budget, it would be a possibility to start 1 task force.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Can you give us an idea of how many referrals regarding illicit cannabis have you received?
Mike Edgell for the record.
And is there a backlog? I'm trying to get back to what the workload is, right? Go ahead.
Correct. Mike Edgell for the record, and thank you for that question. Currently, I don't have a backlog for illicit cannabis investigations, but we have not been proactive for illicit cannabis investigations because it's truly not a priority right now. Our task forces are specifically assigned, and they look at the hard drugs that kill people. We've been meeting with the Cannabis Compliance Board and their administration regarding illicit cannabis activities, and we're trying to determine and put a foothold someplace to start making a difference.
Thank you. The time that I haven't done a whole lot of research on this, but I do know the illicit cannabis market is a problem, right? Not just here, but across the state. How would you measure the success then? Because you haven't, like, so you haven't been able to really get after it yet, understandably. How would you measure the success? If this is approved, then you get a chance to set up this task force and they get to work. And how do you know when you're getting it done?
Mike Edgel for the record. It's a great question. Thank you. We would be able to determine what we're doing based on evidence that we've collected. And one thing that I do want to point out, our task forces, along with the illicit cannabis task force, would not be looking at users. They would be focusing on mid to high level drug traffickers. And once something was identified, we would work into there, and once again, we would our performance measure for this would still be dismantling and dismantling drug organizations.
Okay, just one final question, Jeff. Thank you, Chief. Just one more question. Are there people from other agencies that would be assigned to work with the task force?
Mike Edgel for the record. That would be my hopes. On our current task forces across 5 different counties, we have sheriff's agencies, we have city PDs, we do have correctional officers, and we do have National Guard members on there. So if this were approved and we were to make a determination where it would be, I would immediately reach out to our law enforcement partners and we would start to build a task force.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Chief. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We'll go next to Senator Titus.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple questions, if I might. First, you mentioned 5 different counties that share in these task force. Which counties are those? I'm sorry if I missed that before.
So currently I have a task force in Elko and members of, so I'll break it down a little bit. Elko, I have one in Ely, we have one in Winnemucca, we have one in Fallon, and we have one in Carson City.
Right. So along that same lines, though, it seems to me like it's to create a task force against illicit cannabis use. It's already illegal to sell it without going through having proper permits and collecting the taxes. So are you looking at, is it a tax evasion fine that they get or is it an overpossession? How do you enforce that?
Mike Edgel for the record. Thank you for your question, Senator. Where you're, the way we would enforce it is it's still a crime. And we would not be enforcing any administrative penalties on anybody, but we would be going after the illicit pop-up dispensaries, illicit parties, drug traffickers, as well as grow sites, whether they were indoors or outdoors. So we wouldn't be focusing on any administrative penalties, but making arrests and prosecuting.
Well, I guess I have to ask then, follow up if I might, Chair, why isn't the local law enforcement already doing that? I mean, it's against the law. It's an issue, especially down on the Strip. Why is not Metro enforcing this without the need for the state to come in with another task force?
Mike Edgel for the record. Thank you for your question, Senator Titus. There are a few answers to that. One is going to be priority. Doing the research that I've been looking into over the last couple of months, working with the Cannabis Compliance Board and actually sitting through some of these meetings, there is even a public perception that cannabis is legal and it's not a big problem. However, looking at the bigger problem that's associated with that is like crime, violence. There's been several murders in the state. I can't speak to anybody's behalf why they're not doing it, but I can tell you that Las Vegas Metro has made some arrests. They have done enforcement in this. So it does come down to priority because like our drug task forces that are across the state, we focus on the major drugs that are hurting and killing people, such as fentanyl, methamphetamine, and cocaine.
Revenue issue also, and it's huge. And I think that the more enforcement on these pop-up facilities, pop-up sellers, needs to be enforced. So I think we've taxed it so high now that they see that it's better just to sell it like moonshine, I guess, because they don't have to pay a tax on it. And so I'd like to see some more enforcement just for revenue and get these guys off the streets so we can collect the taxes that we need so desperately to collect. So thank you. I guess it's a statement more than a question.
That sounds like it is a statement. Thank you, Senator. However, I do want to follow up on that because I do think there is a relevant point to that, and that is, and I think the discussion last session was exactly about that issue and the impact that these illegal, illicit operations are having that appear legitimate and are eroding the legalized cannabis industry, and the statutory changes that I believe you discussed, and I think this is kind of the follow-up to that, is a way to address it. At the same time, my colleague Senator Titus brings up a great point, which is that I believe a portion of the revenue generated from legal cannabis sales goes to support local law enforcement for the purposes of enforcement to try and get at some of these same issues. So I think that since this has been discussed and this is the direction that we're going in terms of having a statewide unit to address this issue, I think that's a great idea. It sounds like there's going to be partnership with local law enforcement. The question is, has there been any discussion about funding from the legal cannabis industry to support these efforts, since we have funding going to support members? Any other questions for the Investigations Division? For the Investigations Division? All right. Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll move on to our next division.
Good morning, Chair Watts and members of the subcommittee. My name is Erica Souza Llamas. That's ERICA-SOUZA-LLAMAS. I'm the Division Administrator for the Records, Communications, and Compliance Division within the Department of Public Safety, otherwise known as RCCD, or the Central Repository. I have with me today Jason Colnut. He's our Chief Fiscal Officer. And I also have Shannon Helgett, who's our Records Bureau Chief, and also acting as our NCGIS Modernization Program Administrator. I have combined both of our budget accounts, 4709 and 4702, into one presentation. I can go over both, and we can do questions afterwards, or we can break for questions in between, whatever the subcommittee prefers.
I think go ahead and go through the presentation briefly, and then we'll take questions after that.
All right. This slide here is RCCD's mission and vision statements. I won't go over them. This slide represents the various interfaces and connections of NCGIS, which either have already been modernized or are currently in progress of modernization today. The legacy NCGIS system is 22 plus years old, with the proprietary owner retiring soon. The new system will meet our mission to provide accurate, timely, and complete criminal justice information for both criminal and civil purposes. This has been a multi-biennial effort and will bring with it new systems and much-needed efficiencies. Timeliness and efficiency, for example, includes fingerprint-based background checks for civil purposes, which are currently mostly manual and will become mostly automated with the modernization. So I'd like to take a moment to thank the budget committees of the legislature and the governor's office for their support to help get us to this point and achieve the successes we have outlined on this slide. I'm thankful to my predecessors and the staff who have worked tirelessly on this program to deliver the successes we have to date. RCCD has been using a program approach to develop and implement the modernization by adequately staffing the program for success and dividing it into multi-biennial funding to spread the cost out for affordability. We've had a dedicated program administrator and program management office staffed with both contracted and full-time equivalent state positions. I am happy to report to you that we launched the Nevada Civil and Criminal Information System web portal in May of 2023. The portal is accessible through any browser and serves as the gateway for both civil business and criminal justice users' access into our systems. It links the new civil solutions and provides functionality not previously available to our civil business users. Also in May of 2023, we implemented the new law enforcement message switch, which is the communication nexus connecting agencies to numerous criminal justice databases and sources. We also made history by being the first state in the nation to connect to the FBI Interstate Identification Index's new National Information Exchange Model Extensible Markup Language, known as NEM XML. NEM is a common technical language that allows the sharing of critical information across diverse organizations. And most recently, in October of 2024, we deployed the new statewide warrant system, and on January 28th of 2025, we deployed 3 of our civil background applications, which included the portal access for our Brady firearms background checks. The FFLs can now access the portal and enter their own background checks as opposed to calling on the phone and waiting on hold for our staff to answer the phones. So what's next for NCGIS modernization? We will finish delivering phase 1 of NCGIS by this fiscal year and wrap up the final pieces of the portal search functionality by August. Remaining activities consist of the replacement of the computerized criminal history system and the civil fingerprint-based background check automation and portal access in late May of 2025. This will be where our civil fingerprint users will realize the efficiencies of the new system and where our response times for licensing and employment will considerably shrink. Phase 2 consists of replacing the current sex offender registry, as Jason stated, and our protection order systems to better align the technology and ease of access with the new NCGIS environment. New functionality will also be added to NCGIS to further enhance efficiencies, such as providing a live scan fingerprinting portal for our live scan sites to log into and track the status of submitted fingerprints to determine success or failure history, etc. Phase 2 will also enhance processing and capabilities of existing features and applications from Phase 1, which includes further automating DNA flag processing in our CCH, further developing electronic disposition and protection order interfaces with courts to eliminate manual data entry by repository staff, and implementing a criminal history metrics dashboard to allow the division to extract criminal history data for analysis and aggregation to identify record accuracy and completeness. And finally, Phase 2 will improve the division's resiliency by developing and implementing disaster recovery for our automated biometric identification system and assessing the current network to identify redundancy mechanisms, operational readiness, and performance optimization. We'll continue to use a program approach for Phase 2. This will be a smaller lift than Phase 1 and is expected to be completed within the first half of fiscal year 28. I'd like to note that upon Phase 2 completion, the NCGIS modernization program will conclude. At that point, any changes needed as a result of business processes or legislative mandates will be handled as disparate system enhancements. So this slide represents the current schedule of the remaining tasks to complete Phase 1 of the modernization. We will, of course, with the approval of this committee, be starting Phase 2 at the conclusion of Phase 1. The blue font represents items in progress as of today, and the gray font represents completed tasks. There are some rework items from Phase 1 that Jason mentioned that we deemed acceptable for go live that we determined we can work with in the interim, but we'll need to go back to them after the conclusion of Phase 1 to readdress these items. It was necessary to push these to fiscal year 26-27 as to not disrupt the program schedule. I would like to note that although we've experienced delays within the NCGIS modernization, our initial timeline was very aggressive, and we are still within the legislatively approved timeline for completion of Phase 1 in fiscal year 25. And despite the added costs from these delays, we are well within the legislatively approved overall budget of $54 million. Every legislative session, the division starts out tracking approximately 400 or so bills, and at the end of the session, we end up with approximately 100, give or take, that are enacted that impact the division on the topics provided on this slide. Being able to work with the sponsors, LCB Legal, and the impacted entities is helpful for many reasons, so we greatly appreciate the partnerships. And regarding the budget side of session, we are grateful for what is in this biennium's governor's recommended budget, specifically the full appropriation to ensure Phase 1 is concluded and to begin Phase 2 implementation. So I'm going to transition now to Budget Account 4702. The Communications Bureau are our unsung heroes and the state's first responders. They are the calm voice in the middle of chaos for both the public and our officers. In addition to the DPS sworn divisions, dispatch provides 24/7, 365 dispatch radio services for an additional 15 allied agencies, to include the Attorney General's Office, DMV's Compliance Unit, the Nevada Transportation Authority, Homeland Security, and the U.S. Probation Office, just to name a few. Our dispatchers coordinate with local public safety agencies on critical incidents. They perform warrant and dangerous offender notification tasks, as well as act as the state's criminal justice information systems agency as required by the FBI. In fiscal year '24, the division was approved for 4 administrative assistant positions in an attempt to provide relief to our amazing dispatchers. These positions are taking some of the administrative workloads off of our dispatchers and include assisting with warrants, dangerous offender notifications, and answering the telephones. The division's Communications Bureau has continued to suffer from staffing shortages with our dispatchers, which have become a public and officer safety concern for the department. These shortages are taking its toll on even our most experienced and tenured staff. Our statewide dispatcher vacancy rate sits at 36%. However, of the 36 filled dispatcher positions we have today, we have 13 of them in training. So if you remove the trainees out of the equation because they can't yet contribute to the daily workload rotations, our vacancy rate sits at 59%. This leaves a lot of gaps in minimum coverage for the state and results in a lot of overtime for our staff. My dispatch staff work a minimum of 4 12-hour shifts every week. That's a minimum of 48 hours that they're scheduled for before voluntary and mandated overtime are issued. We rely very heavily on overtime to help provide the bare minimum coverage, either voluntarily or we mandate overtime when there are not enough volunteers. And then we have last-minute mandated overtime when our staff call out sick and coverage is needed on the phones and radios. I would like to add that oftentimes we do fall below the minimum staffing levels. All of this overtime results in staff either coming in on their days off or working 14 to 16-hour shifts. We've had to shut down radio channels due to the shortages, which means we're more officers on a single channel being worked by a single dispatcher. This is extremely stressful to our dispatchers, and it's stressful for the officers. Our staff are carrying significant workloads in an already stressful job. Along with bringing in the administrative assistant positions, we've tried to mitigate this by securing an emergency contract for our dispatchers, by bringing in dispatchers on demand who are essentially traveling dispatchers to come in and help supplement some of the vacancies. So I'm going to toss this back over to Jason again to go over the 4702 budget request.
Again, for the record, Jason Colnut. I'll highlight just a couple of decision units here. We have E225, which Erica mentioned, continues funding for 4 administrative positions. And E249 is a request for the dispatch staff for the Las Vegas Bermuda building. This is a new lease. It was approved at the August BOE meeting, and the department is currently in the process of transitioning into the new location. So I would like to thank you for the opportunity to present today, and this concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much for that presentation. I believe we're going to start going back to budget account 4709 with the central repository. We do have some questions about that budget account. We will start with Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this presentation and all that your staff does. Back at 4709, I had a general question of why did the agency not contemplate increasing its fees to offset the increase of expenses, which of course would minimize the general fund ask?
Erica Suzuyamas for the record. I believe it was in 2019 we did receive a $3 or $3.50 increase in our fingerprint fees to help supplement the increasing costs of the repository. We haven't received any more since then.
Thank you. And similar, why did the governor not recommend proportional fee increases to support a portion of the Nevada Criminal History Repository maintenance expenses?
Sherry Brigham for the record. I think it kind of, there were decisions made based on the amount of income coming in and based on the amount of reserves we were maintaining. I believe at the end of session, during the last biennium, it was determined that our current revenue and reserves should be able to keep the division afloat. But it was determined that the reserves, instead of remaining reserves, would go back to the general fund, and therefore we would have to request general funds for any increases or enhancements, where in the past we relied on our reserves, which was enough to sustain it at that time, with the exception of Insidious Mod, the significant first buy.
Thank you. I just have a quick follow-up. So, does your agency have the authority to adjust fees, or does that require statutory changes?
Erica Suzuyamas, for the record, it does not require any statutory changes, but we do need to get approval from the legislative committees to raise our fees.
Thank you. So just following up on my colleague's question then. So you mentioned the 2019, I believe, adjustment. So was there any contemplation or discussion of additional fee adjustments, or was that just not considered given the issues using reserves and then moving to general fund to cover the overages?
Erica Suzuyamas, for the record, we're in the middle of a fee study right now, which I think is providing some insight into where we could potentially institute some fees that we never have, or increase existing fees that some, for example, have never been increased for years. So we are looking into that.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And then last question, can you give us just a sense of the timeline on that fee study?
Jason Colna, for the record. The company has completed their research. We are in the negotiation phase on their report to us. We've seen draft and unedited versions, but they haven't submitted the final one. We expect it by the end of the month.
Oh, okay. That's great. Please keep us updated on that. We'll go next to Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pretty alarm. I have a number of questions, actually, if I might. First, a comment. Very alarming about your dispatchers, and thank goodness that you have at least 13 in training, I think I heard you say. So hopefully we can get some more in training. So I have a number of questions. First, on the 5 positions remaining in the criminal history repository budget account, which were expected to be transferred to the DPS office upon completion of the NCJIS modernization, please indicate which positions would support ongoing maintenance and which positions would support additional enhancements, maybe that not yet approved.
Erica Suzuyamas, for the record, for phase 2 of the NCJIS modernization that's coming up, that's slated to begin in September of 2025, we would require 4 of the existing business process analyst positions to support those efforts.
All right, thank you for that follow-up, if I might, Mr. Chair. So 4 of those out of the 5.
Erica Suzuyamas, yes.
Okay. And then along the same positions, please discuss the need to retain 5 positions approved during the 82nd legislative session, in addition to the 7 new positions recommended within one-time appropriations to support the NCJIS maintenance and enhancements.
Erica Suzuyamas, for the record. Sorry, I was trying to understand your question. So the 7 additional...
So we gave you 5 in 82, right? In addition to the 7.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Erica Suzuyamas, for the record. I believe those are our NCJIS support specialists that are responsible for supporting the NCJIS, the new NCJIS Solutions Service Desk. So because our solutions are all technology-based, automated, and our civil users have never had access to these systems before, like I mentioned in my presentation, we have thousands of civil users who are now going to require service desk assistance to access the systems, help troubleshoot if they can't get logged into the system.
If approved, do you suspect any difficulty filling the positions?
Erica Suzuyamas, for the record, no, I do not.
All right, and a final question, if I might, Mr. Chair. So can you kind of, discuss any additional components that of this NCJIS system that would be added through one-time appropriations?
Erica Suziamas for the record, yes. So phase 2 would continue to build upon what we're implementing in phase 1 right now, which is expected to conclude by the end of this fiscal year. Phase 2 would replace our existing sex offender registry system and our existing protection order program. And then it will continue to build upon enhancements that we are modernizing now. So items that we discovered as we were implementing phase 1 that weren't included in our requirements at the beginning are included in phase 2.
Thank you for that. And I just want to congratulate you on the Brady background check. I mean, I haven't had anybody reach out to me in complaints about how long it's taking, and I've always hit you guys up on that on these kind of hearings. So I don't have that this session. So thank you very much for moving that forward and expediting that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Chair Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Just a really quick question, and this just might be my lack of knowledge. What is the difference between an active sex offender and an inactive sex offender? We want them all to be inactive, right?
That would be great.
I'm just saying, right?
Erica Suziamas for the record. So the active offenders are those that are living in the state and required to register here in Nevada. The inactive offenders could be folks that have come in and registered to visit if they were on vacation, or they were previously Nevada residents and they've left the state.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. I guess one thing that I just want to flag, and probably as an additional follow-up item, we know that it's been a long road on the NCJIS modernization project. I believe that we, approved a spending plan for about $57.5 million to complete this, and it looks like it's coming in under budget, so that's great. However, when we look at some of these decision items put together, as well as the one-shots, $4.5 million for maintenance in fiscal year 2026, $3.6 million in fiscal year 2027, contract expenses, moving positions over, adding positions. I am concerned about the total ongoing maintenance expenses for this program. In my mind, we spend a lot of money to do the upgrades to our systems, and we know that there's going to be ongoing maintenance expenses, but I'm just concerned that when you add all of those things together, it's not much lower than what we're putting in to do the overhaul in the first place. And again, in my mind, those modernization projects should have a large kind of capital intensive, for lack of a better word, investment in the system overhaul, and then a smaller ongoing maintenance expense. So there's not much of a question there. I just want to raise that, and if there's any additional information you could provide us. I know sometimes you don't necessarily know until you get through the other side, but it's just an issue of concern. So if you can kind of help provide us some additional information, and particularly I know that there's expenses involved in helping get people kind of acquainted with the new system, but really understanding if some of these things are going to taper off over the next couple years, and how much we're going to be kind of on the hook for maintaining this system over the long term. That would be helpful, because I'm personally concerned about a modernization project where we spend about $10 million a year to do it, and then we start spending about $10 million a year to maintain it. So, members, any other questions on this budget account? Okay, seeing none, I think we will move on to budget account 4702. And I believe our first question is from Assemblymember Hibbets.
Thank you, Chair. My questions are on your 4702, the dispatch positions, and as a retired law enforcement officer, I can attest to the criticality of those positions. Has the utilization of the 4 administrative assistant positions in the previous interim impacted the overtime worked by your dispatchers? Has it gone up, gone down, stayed the same?
Erica Suzuyamas for the record. It has not made an impact to the dispatchers yet. I think we only have, I think one of those administrative positions filled at this time.
And follow-up, Chair?
Go ahead.
Okay, so has the additional administrative support improved the retention rate for your dispatchers at all? The ones that were
I don't-
there, are they staying?
Sorry, Erica Suzuyamas for the record. I don't, can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
No problem. I'm just wondering if the additional administrative support has improved the retention rate for the dispatchers. Are you still losing them at an alarming rate, or are they staying a little longer?
Erica Suzuyamas for the record. It has not, only because we didn't get those positions until later on in calendar year 2024. I haven't noticed a difference. I will tell you, I should probably knock on wood when I say this, I have noticed a slowdown in us losing our dispatchers here recently, but I can't attribute that to the administrative assistant positions.
And if I had one more. So you said that your, without your trainees, that your vacancy rate in dispatch is 59%. With them, it's 36%, which is a good start. Can you discuss your efforts to reduce the vacancy rates? How are you going about recruiting dispatchers?
Yes, Erica Suzuyamas for the record. So we've changed our approach to recruiting. We've removed some barriers that we identified at the front end of recruiting, and that has resulted in more qualified applicants. And I would say over the last 2 training academies that we've held, it's resulted in larger academies. I think in our academy, we have a group in training on the floor. I think we have 5 training. I think they're moving into the radio trainings now, finishing up phones, going into radios. And I have this last academy that's in class right now. We started with 11 trainees, and we're down to 9 right now. Dispatching is a very difficult job. We do our best to try to educate the applicants on the front end to let them know what the job entails. We still always end up losing candidates in the training academy because they discover that this job isn't for them.
Thank you. Members, any other questions on this budget account or for records communications? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the fire marshal.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I am Mike Dzyak, D-Z-Y-A-K, and I am your state fire marshal. Before we get going, I promise you I'm going to skim through our presentation and get to the questions. The word on the street is that you've got some questions. But I'd like to start by thanking you all. 2 sessions ago, when I took the chief's job, we had budgetary issues. And you all helped me solve those. In fact, I recall Assemblymember Watts, excuse me, I told him, I said, I don't sleep good at night because we weren't meeting our statutory mandates. I knew things that were out there. And you asked me the question, you said, what will make you sleep better? And I wanted to thank you because I sleep a lot better these days. I'm happy to report to you that we are getting better in all things, and we are getting very close to being the agency that the state deserves. This first slide's our vision statement. You guys can read all through that. Our division overview. I think a lot of you are going to ask questions because you're surprised at how many different things such a small agency does all over the state. So we'll put those in the question era. There's our giant list of statutory mandates outside of NRS 477 that we try to comply with. Our current division organizational chart, again, right there. Here's our funding sources, the pie chart breakdown of all the different things that keep our wheels spinning and keep us out there with the public. Our operating bureaus of the Fire Protection Bureau, 9 full-time, 5 full-time fire life safety inspectors, 2 plans examiners, and 2 administrative assistants, 1 in plans, 1 in certificates of compliance. We have a licensing bureau with 4 FTEs, a business process analyst, 1 program officer, and 2 admin assistants. Our fire service training bureau with 4 FTEs, 1 basically our bureau chief, and 3 FTE training officers. And we do utilize a lot of adjunct instructors throughout that. That's what keeps our FTE number low in training. Investigation Enforcement Bureau, 7 FTEs, 1 lieutenant, 2 sergeants, 3 DPS officers / investigators, and 1 administrative assistant. Our division accomplishments, I'm just going to highlight a couple of these. Our Fire Protection Bureau added those 2 full-time inspectors that were hired for our Las Vegas office, bringing the total of 3 full-time inspectors down in Vegas. That has been absolutely successful. Our turnaround times and our response times to businesses and licensed care facilities, no issues at all. Incorporated of Washoe County daycare inspections into the state fire marshal schedule for statutory annual inspections. We have, since we got this last year in about August when we realized this was occurring, we already have completed 124 of those 300 plus inspections. So we're well on our way, and we were able, thanks to you guys, to hire that one of the 2 fire inspector positions that we were going to ask for in this session. We got them on the emergency because of that, and that gentleman is trained up and out there and doing great. It's been wonderful. They are utilizing the implemented Tyler technology inspection software, utilizing iPads, get us away from papers and get us more streamlined. Our licensing bureau is working on uploading old documents into our online system to get rid of file cabinets and go paperless. Anyone who's worked in state government knows how challenging that can be, but we are well on our way. Our training bureau, 4,375 written exams and 400 skill test packets with an average pass rate of 95% on all written exams and 99% success rate on all skill tests. I mention this because that's part of our job is to train and certify firefighters throughout the state of Nevada, and the staff is doing it. We're automated. We no longer have to respond to calls for, hey, can you find my my Firefighter 1 certificate from the 1990s? They go on the website and they research it and they can print it off from there. Delivering the division's fire investigation training program to Northern Nevada fire agencies with 100% success rate. I bring this to you because it's important to know that when COVID struck, the National Fire Academy back in Emmitsburg locked up. They shut down, and this was what was then the R203 class, was the basic fire investigator class, and we all relied on it. And when we couldn't get in, even after COVID, the lists were so long we weren't getting our people in, which made us change gears and say we have to do this better. And I'm proud of this because we were able to obtain a fire investigation trailer with these burn cells that we can set fire to. So we're now training fire investigators throughout the state, those captains, anyone who has that willingness to help us on scenes maybe before our nationally certified investigators get on scene, but knowing how to collect evidence, how not to damage evidence, things like that. And they have done an outstanding job with that. And our ability to bring that training wherever it is. We put it on in Las Vegas, we put it on in Elko, we put it on where it needs to be. Training Bureau, still a lot of live fire events acquired, doing it after we acquired the Draeger trailer. This is a state-of-the-art structure fire training. So we were able to put firefighters, volunteer paid, any one of them, through actual live fire evolutions in a safe environment. I don't have the toxic smoke. Before, when we did this, you had to find somebody's old house to set fire to and go and practice on it. And we brought this to the state, and this has been an absolute success. I think if any of you talk to your constituent fire chiefs, you will find that they are very grateful for this training, and our staff is really hard at it. And last but not least, completed the third-party accreditation for the International Fire Service Accreditation Council. What IFSAC does, and why it's important to the state of Nevada, is that 48 states recognize IFSAC. So no matter what discipline you're training in the fire service, you're going to be a vehicle extrication. We being certified for us through IFSAC allows us, our firefighters, to be certified anywhere in another state that shows reciprocity. We also have firefighters come in from other states. If they have this IFSAC accreditation, we can just accept them. And that was an initial problem in the early stages. Our investigation bureau, the creation of the Ignitable Liquid Canine Detection Program, absolutely successful. Our newest member, Hutch, is a yellow lab that was assigned to Investigator Schaefer, came on duty this week on Tuesday. So that brings us to 2 accelerant canines in the north and 1 in the south. I would like to also mention that our canines are not just accelerant canines. They're not just trained as a tool to look in to say, hey, why is the canine hitting on liquid accelerants in the living room? That's not a place we'd expect to see them. So that's where it tells us where we can take our tests. But ours are also cross-trained to detect for serial arsonists. Serial arsonists in the wildland use different techniques. They use different methods such as mosquito coils or brake fluid and bromine tablets to create these delayed devices so they can drive away as the fire goes off and they're out of the scene. Nobody sees them driving away. Our dogs can find those. They're trained to hit on those things. So instead of waiting 5 fires before we realize we have a torch out there who is starting these throughout the wildland, our dogs can find it on that first fire and say, well, somebody put that there. And now we know where to set up the game cams and start our investigation procedures. It's been very successful and very well utilized. And my last for investigation is the Safe Trails Task Force. Our Director Tagliati was instrumental in putting us together. We had a problem. We have fires that occur on tribal lands. And NRS 477 does not give me the authority to utilize state resources on tribal land. We tried different ways to go with the Bureau of Indian Affairs to get us out there. We knew they needed our help, but we couldn't figure out how to get there. And Director Tagliati put us in with the Safe Trails Task Force through the FBI. All of our northern investigators are now deputized to go onto tribal land, and a mechanism is in place for us to be reimbursed the costs of those investigations. And we have the resources to do it, and the dogs and everything else. Budget enhancements, E278, Fire and Life Safety Inspector position. I hit on that. I anticipate questions, so move along. E300 is Administrative Assistant in Las Vegas. We're in a new building in the Las Vegas area. We're adding staff to that and getting that up and running. The beauty of it is it did come with not only the space for our staff as we outgrew the Campos building in Las Vegas, but it gave us a giant fire ground to utilize. We're currently working with State Public Works to get it secured where we can put on large-scale fire training in that area. So it was a bonus. The administrative assistant would work down there, providing that support. E301, administrative assistant position in Carson City. This is for the training bureau. The training bureau currently does not have an administrative assistant. So that would be helping with all of the things that those guys do so we can keep the adjunct instructors training our firefighters. E276, DPS officer position for Carson City. That's again another fire investigator position. The north tends to have the most workload in the fires and the most distance to drive to get to those fires. So we feel one additional investigator will probably get us right there to where we need to be. It also allows for them to come off standby. Our investigators are on standby. There's at least one investigator, one supervisor. So the more investigators you have, the less time you have to spend worrying about that phone ring and canceling family plans and things like that. E302, the training officer position in Las Vegas. This was something I was surprised about when we started talking about increasing our presence and footprint in Las Vegas, was that there's 13 volunteer and 5 paid departments down there. The paid departments normally have large training budgets, and but I've been surprised how much they have utilized us. But there's 13 volunteer departments down there that don't have those budgets. Some of them even in Clark County that don't, because of their population, don't receive as much of the funding as some of the more metropolitan stations. And so they are more than excited to have this down there. And we have already started, even because we don't have the security for our big parking lot down there yet, but we've already started training, and it's been very successful. This training officer position down there would facilitate all that and just take the logistics out of trying to manage it from Carson City. E303, one administrative service officer in Carson City. As you saw from the pie chart, our funding is very, very diverse. And it's a very difficult, it's small, it's not the larger budgets that you see, but it's very diverse, and the ASO will allow us to utilize more. We travel a lot. We have a tendency, because of our assignments, our inspectors are traveling, our investigators are traveling, our training officers are traveling, and it puts a tax on our fiscal. And I want to make sure as we grow back to where we need to be, that we have that baseline support. It's not just inspectors and officers. We need administrative assistants and fiscal personnel. I'm going to let Jennifer introduce herself, and just disregard, she's over here. Introduce herself, and she's going to go over some of these budget enhancements.
Yes, Jennifer Jenkins for the record, Jennafer Jenkins, Jenkins. I'm the Fiscal Services Bureau Chief for the Fire Marshal's Office. Our enhancement, E277, requests funds for a mobile data terminals for the sworn personnel. This goes in their vehicles so that they can better access pertinent information during investigations when they're on scene. E225 requests funds to increase in-state travel. This is to accommodate travel to and from our Las Vegas office that we now have. E226 requests funds for an ongoing contract to provide provide fire prevention mobile software. This is a Noble Services contract for our training division. E227 is to request funds for a testing databank system for our licensing program. E228 requests funds for an ongoing contract to provide hazmat training. E280 requests funds for a new accelerant detection dog canine vehicle heat system, canine vehicle kennel, and build out to a current vehicle. This is provided by the United We Stand grant. E680 requests funds to add for or accommodate the rent for our state-owned Southern Command. E710 requests funds for the replacement of one agency-owned vehicle in the fiscal year 2026 and 2 in fiscal year 2027, which have either miled out or are over the 10-year age limit. E711 requests funds for replacement of turnout gear for our sworn officers. E712 requests replacement computer hardware associated with software per the Office of the Chief Information Officer's recommended replacement schedule. E720 requests purchases of a new vehicle to replace a previously leased vehicle through Fleet Services for our inspector. And those are the totality of our enhancements.
Mike Dezak, State Fire Marshal for the record. We'll take any questions you have.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. Well done. We do have some questions. I believe we'll start with Assemblymember Dickman.
Thank you so much, Chair, and I have a couple questions, if that's okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, Chief. I love the enthusiasm you have for all the great things you're doing in your division, and particularly what you've done with those inspections. I mean, that just fell on you just now, and you've already done so many. It's really, really good to see. But I do have a question. It looks like there's some substantial discrepancies, revenue disparities between your budget and the governor's recommended budget. So does there need to be some updated projections for the next biennium?
Yes, Jennifer Jenkins for the record. We have spoken with Mr. Weber regarding those disparities based on the adjusted base. And we feel that we have a methodology that we will implement to update our projections based on the current amounts that were brought in fiscal year 2024, which is a more accurate representation opposed to the 4-year average that we have previously used for projecting revenue.
Thank you for that. And then moving on to E276. You did talk a little bit about this and why you need this position, but is there a higher volume of like fire and explosion investigation activities over the past or the biennium that we are in that necessitate an additional position in Northern Nevada particularly?
Mike Dezak for the record. Thank you for the question. And yes, we have an increase in the utilization of the services. To put it in perspective, to try to keep the current 2 officers, we're just talking about the north, the current 2 investigators and canines, and the 1 sergeant on call all the time puts another part of the stress. Things like anything else, they run in patches, it seems. So you have downtime when you have things that aren't happening, and then all of a sudden they all happen. Every time somebody starts turning on their wood-burning stoves and start using them, we get fires. When we hit fire season, we get fires. And it's I think this is a good it's a good number to get us to where we can respond to anything, where we're not burning investigators out, and yet we can project our resources anywhere in the state.
So there are some gaps without this position.
Mike Dezak for the record, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thanks, Chair.
Thank you, and I think it would be helpful if we could just get some follow-up information around some of the volume of these issues so that we can, again, as mentioned previously, so that we just have some additional information to contextualize those needs and the burden that is being placed on existing staff. So with that, we'll go to Senator Nguyen.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I missed the first part of your presentation. I was next door presenting a bill. I have a couple of questions, and it'll feel like a little bit of deja vu from December IFC. But I know in the December IFC meeting, you had come and requested, and it's my understanding you had initially requested those 2 fire and life safety inspector positions, and then realized that you needed that at least one of those positions immediately, and so came to IFC. Just to clarify, this position here that's requested in, E278, this would be yet another position in that area? One, that's my first question, and it sounds like you're nodding your head, so I'm thinking that's yes. And then the second thing is, how would this additional position enable you to comply with some of those statutory requirements? And I know there was quite a few things in the rural communities as well as in Washoe County with the child care facilities inspections. So would this additional position help?
Mike Dezak for the record. Thank you, Senator, for the question. This gets us closer. What I think we're trying to do is we are trying to meet all of our statutory mandates in specific areas, but prudently, not just throwing positions at something. We know we need help in inspections. We're not meeting all of our statutory mandates. With this additional fire life safety inspector, will we? Probably not, but we'll be a lot closer than we were, and we have to gauge. Now I have this other inspector and I can see what it does to the workload as it goes, rather than just throw I need 4 positions. I'm sure it's going to come to 4 positions in the north eventually, but right now we need to see how much does one inspector position buy me? How much does that second inspector buy me? And to get to those hotel motels that are out in Austin that are off the beaten path and make sure they're getting inspected, we have a tremendous amount of responsibilities in those rural communities, and especially we have communities out there that don't even have a building official, and we're trying to help get them anything, they help them with things we wouldn't ordinarily, like a dollar store or things like that. So yes, this inspector is very much needed. The miles that we have to travel to get to these inspections in the north is really a big issue. And take a place like Winnemucca. If we have to inspect all of our statutorily mandated inspections in Winnemucca, it's going to take a handful of inspectors a week at least to get to those, to get to all the churches, the hotel motels, the eating and drinking establishments, the places of assembly, all those things that we have to hit in one area. So you've either got to keep driving back to it or, throw all the resources you have at it and try to shorten the time. That's where this position comes in.
Chair, may I follow up? I know that in the documentation that you had provided to this committee, you had indicated in fiscal year 24 that there were 968 fire inspections, and that averaged about 80 inspections per month. And is it my understanding that for those, that just was with that one fire inspector that you have? And now you have 2 going into this and potentially 3 if this is approved, and that will... Those previous inspections didn't even include the child care facilities. Is that my understanding? Is that correct? In addition to all the rural businesses and other things that you had talked about before.
Exactly. Mike Dezak for the record. That's exactly it. We didn't count on these. As you can see from our long list of statutes that tell us what we're supposed to be doing, this was one of those things that I've told you before, I've been here almost 25 years. I started out as an inspector. Never did I do a child care inspector in Washoe County that wasn't associated with a state facility, that wasn't at the college or something. So this was something in addition to what we were already trying to get enough staff at, but to do it in a smart and concise manner.
And Chair, I have a couple other questions about the Southern Nevada needs, but I think Senator Titus might have a follow-up on this. I don't know if you want to come back to me, or I can just ask my questions.
We'll go to Senator Titus, and then we'll come back to Senator Nguyen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Because it's on the same budget. Really concerned. I was shocked during the IFC hearing where you addressed, all of a sudden dropped in your lap these 300 child care facilities. But you didn't mention in any of the documents that I have here how many have you actually gotten done. It hasn't been very long, but have you gotten into any of those 300?
For the record, Mike Dezak, to the last record, 124 of those facilities have been inspected by my staff and have worked through any of the potential or legitimate violations that they had to keep the children safe, to keep things operating when we can. So yeah, I'm very proud of that fact. Did it come at a cost? Yeah, I'm sure there were fewer state annual inspections that happened because we had to respond to this. But
well, thank you for that good work. One just brief question following it. You also are responsible for all these rural areas that you go out to. And I know we have rural fire districts and rural fire chiefs. Can they serve that role in inspecting these buildings to expedite that? Or is your division the only one that can do the fire inspections? Because I've had the fire chief come out before we could open our historical society building. Our local chief came out and inspected it, and then we had to wait for a year off. I mean, I'm just wondering what that process is.
For the record, Mike Dezak, that's a great question. Thank you. The answer is yes and no. We do interlocal agreements with counties and fire protection districts and fire departments that have the skill set, the credentials to perform those. And in that case, absolutely, we would incorporate that. I think it was probably Chief Draper that went and helped you out. And Chief Draper's a great guy, and he calls us all the time. When Dollar General doesn't do what he's telling them to do, we come out and send an officer and go get them on the straight and narrow. But yes, in a lot of places there just isn't. There's a volunteer fire chief who doesn't have those prevention credentials in order to do those. So we would have to do them.
Thank you. I guess I have one quick question. Would the fire and explosion investigation position step in at all to assist in the inspections workload?
Mike Dezak, for the record, another great question. I'm getting all the great ones, really. The answer is yeah. Our investigators, as they go through their training, we send them to an ICC, International Code Council training that gets them their certification, and then we send them out with our full-time inspectors so that, I mean, there's just, we're too small to not multitask, and our officers absolutely pick those up. Our officers have been tasked with making sure that facilities are complying with the hazardous material permitting requirements. That's been a huge thing for us because anytime you have a building with hazardous materials, we're not, if that building's, let's say in Washoe County, we're not there inspecting the exits. The fire doors were simply there to look at the types of materials they have and ensure they're in the system so that fire departments can use our system to determine pre-fire plans. What kind of bad chemicals do I have in this place before we ever go in, when the tone comes out to that address? Those officers absolutely do those inspections as well.
Thank you. I think we'll go back to Senator Nguyen.
Thank you. I'm going to kind of shift from my questions regarding northern and rural areas down to some of the new positions that you had spoke about during your presentation, E301 and 302, regarding the Southern Nevada Fire Service Training Bureau. And I was wondering if you could just kind of further discuss how the additional training officer position would ensure fire service training needs of the fire departments in Southern Nevada and how they are being met.
Mike Dezak, for the record, absolutely, I would love to. I'm very excited. I spent most of my career up north, and I didn't know that there was a lot of needs. I guess I just made an incorrect assumption that because Clark County was the biggest of all of them, that they had everything that they needed down there, and I didn't realize the need. And as soon as we started talking about this, and it all stemmed from us having to, as we added those inspector positions, and we're looking for a leased building initially, and then we ended up really falling into this Southern Command building. Was just outstanding because now we have the ability to really put on first-rate training. The training officer position down there, when you add that we're going to start really engaging at this level, having one down there means I don't have to send someone to proctor tests to, that person's still going to be developing curriculum, reviewing curriculum, just like a regular training officer. And then, as I spoke a little bit earlier on our use of adjunct instructors. So what we do is if this person that works for Story County Fire is the best at vehicle extrication. So we get that person and we bring them in, we give them all the tools, we set up the classes, we do all the things so that the fire service sees that the best people in this particular field is the one teaching the classes, not the same guy who's been teaching all the different, that jack of all trades. It allows us to be more specialized. And the training officer position down there will oversee all the adjunct instructors coming out of the South that we maybe haven't even utilized as well because we didn't do this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I had that same thoughts. I was like, don't they have enough down there already? I feel like they're everywhere, but mostly because I live around multiple fire stations. So that's probably why.
That's a good place to live.
It is. My teenage daughter also agrees. So this is more of a technical question regarding some budget stuff. Can you discuss whether the duties currently performed by the training officer positions, these new ones, would be transferred to the new administrative assistant position if approved?
Mike Dezak, for the record. Thank you again, Senator, for the question. So what we found ourselves when we moved out of the campus, now we have this building that we took over from State Public Works with this awesome fire ground on it and this secured rear area where we're going to put all these in. And then we put our three training officers, three inspectors that we got, and now our sergeant, our officer, and now a training officer. What we're trying to do is alleviate the administrative stress on the staff of the North and allow that admin to service all of the positions down in Vegas.
Thank you. I just have one other question on these positions. So I think one of the things that we had heard was that this would help address, by increasing this training capacity, would reduce some of the need for travel and other associated costs. Do you have any estimate of cost savings that we could see as a result of adding these positions?
Mike Dezak for the record. Thank you for the question. We talked about this, and I want to give you a really honest answer, and I'm not sure yet. We didn't do this type of thing in Las Vegas. We haven't done this before. So again, before we run around throwing a lot of resources at something, we kind of want to dip our toes in the pool, see what's happening. Will there be? I'm sure, because the only guy that I know that we need to send down there when it needs to go down is Sean Stratton, one of our training officers who has a CDL and pulls one of our two giant trailers with our tractor trailer down to wherever it has to go. He drives it up to Elko when we train there. He's our go-to guy. So I know he's going to still have to travel. So I don't want to say yes, but the time that he spends down there should be reduced. But again, we're also increasing the amount of training we're putting on in the South. So I don't want to be disingenuous with my answer. And I'm sorry if that seems evasive.
I appreciate the honesty. Thank you. So we'll keep working on that. I believe next we have Chair Taylor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chief. I agree with my colleague, Assemblymember Dickman. Your enthusiasm and your passion for what you do shows, and that's really refreshing. Just a couple of questions. We're talking about the Southern Command and how you kind of fell into a building and that Southern Command is expanding.
Yep.
And I know that's part of why you're asking for positions. How has that expansion impacted the administrative staff for the State Fire Marshal as it is?
Mike Dezak for the record. Thank you. It's increased the workload on it. The things you never think about. Where does the mail go? I had inspectors and I had investigators out there. Well, now you have a building, a standalone building. You're not in a cubicle on the floor of someone else's building. Now you've got to have someone who catches the mail. You've got to have, when packages are delivered, someone has to stay there. These created a lot of different challenges for us that we never dealt with down in Las Vegas. So this is part of that, to say, hey, let's make sure we have the resources in Las Vegas to take care of itself as much as possible to reduce the amount of workload on the admins in the North.
May I have one more question, Chair? Thank you, Chief. That makes sense. One more question about a new position. I think this is Decision Unit E303. It's for a new administrative services position. You talked about the fiscal piece. How do you expect that position to impact the needs that you have from a fiscal standpoint?
I'm going to turn that over to Jennifer and let her talk about it. I've talked a lot.
You almost got away, Jennifer. You almost got away.
So close. Yes, Jennifer Jenkins for the record. The Administrative Services Officer position is meant to kind of take over what I am doing at the current moment, as I'm a Management Analyst 3. This position, our funding sources are very complex, and being fee-based is very unusual when compared to other agencies. And it requires a lot of dedication and time to specific enhancements and work programs and budget building, that being only 3 in fiscal, it's kind of difficult to do. So we expect that position to be able to handle the higher level fiscal duties.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Chief. Chair, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? All right. Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Mike Dezak for the record. Again, I'd like to thank you. I'd also like to let you guys know that my plan is to retire this year, September 12th. I have appreciated everything you have done for my division. I appreciate the kind words about my enthusiasm for it. I've done it for almost half my life, and I've only enjoyed certain parts of it, you know. But this part, really, as much as it means to me, your guys' attention to this and helping me give the next state fire marshal a viable, healthy division it lets me retire and sleep better at night.
Well, thank you very much, Chief, for your service. We truly appreciate everything that you do. We're glad you're able to sleep a little bit better. I'm sure you're going to sleep way better after you're retired. And as to the comment about only enjoying parts of the job, I think that's something all of us can relate to. So, thank you again.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Director.
Mr. Chairman, this is George Tagliati, if I may add something.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt before, but we did have some internet feed issues here down in the south. So I missed part of the final piece of the investigative division with Mike Edgell, and also a little bit at the beginning of Erica's. But what I want to do is make myself available, if particularly with Senator Titus, if there are any questions about prosecution of illicit market, the marijuana in the South. Any questions about that? As to why we don't have more, et cetera. And also, with a new task force, what our design would be, what our objectives and mission would be, and how we would kind of approach it. Any of those types of things for any of the members, I'd be more than happy to do a sidebar or have separate conversations. And again, I apologize. We went dark here at least 3 times, and I missed some of that stuff.
Thank you, Director. We appreciate that. I think we will have some follow-up, particularly in regards to how some of those enforcement efforts are funded and the collaboration between state and local law enforcement agencies. So we will certainly follow up, and we appreciate the offer. And we do apologize for the disruptions that you and anyone else experienced due to our technical difficulties. So with that, members, we will move on to the last item on our agenda today, which is public comment. If you would like to provide public comment by phone, please call 888-475-4499. When prompted to provide the meeting ID, enter 839-6643-4110 and then press pound. Would anyone like to make public comment, either here in Carson City or down in Las Vegas? Seeing nobody coming forward at this time, AVH, would anyone like to provide public comment by phone?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers at this time.
All right. Thank you, everyone. That concludes our business for today. We are adjourned.